So you've written a nice chord progression, maybe a bit like this one. This is a 3/4 loop at 120 BPM, a sort of cinematic lo-fi vibe. And then maybe you've added some smooth bass to it. And then maybe you've textured in some organic drums, courtesy of Mondo Loop's Stream Over Here, but Volume 2. And it's starting to sound pretty sick, but it's still missing something. So in this video, I'm going to break down how you can add some organic textures, some ear candy, some Foley percussion stuff, the best way to approach that, how best to use the Foley loops that you may have on your computer, also how you can be creative and record some of your own, and I'll also break down how you can get a sort of endless stream of random Foley loops through Ableton. Plus, I've also got a giveaway for a really nice percussive Foley textural VST called Ting. This is a plugin from Cleveland Audio full of home recorded percussive taps and tings and sounds and all sorts. So I'll be giving that away to one lucky winner. So all you got to do to enter this one is drop a comment, be a subscriber and like the video. And as soon as you hit just 200 likes, I'll be giving that away. But to start off with, I'm just going to talk about how you can get the most out of your percussive and Foley loops and how you can manipulate them to get a more interesting sound. So I've got this little track going. So first, I just wanted to talk a little bit about loops, where to find them and how I process them generally. Obviously the easiest way and the most time efficient way when you're making a track to use these percussive Foley textural loops is just to have pre-made loops that you can drop onto tracks. So this track in particular was, I was going to do it in 6/4, but it's more 3/4. So it's a little bit difficult to get loops for. Obviously, usually they're in 4/4 timing. Just to show you what the track is, I've got this little piano loop on Noir with a top layer, a piano from Imagiro, the bass line, kick, and snarey perk that I got in the intro. So if I wanted to get some loops for this, I've got some pre-made loops that I can drop in, but there's a few little things I can do. The first thing I wanted to mention is often when I've got loops from other places like Splice, if you go onto Splice, you can search for Foley loop or textural loop and you'll find some stuff. And a lot of them, I don't know why people do it, but if you're looking for lo-fi stuff, often it's going to have a load of noise in the background. So it's just quite difficult to use. So I find that sound suppression stuff like brush free works really well. So for example, this is what we've got. And it's quite noisy. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background. Some are even worse. Like this, for example, it's just really harsh. So I find that a really easy trick to make a lot of these more usable and get your own unique sound, because obviously it's a loop, other people are going to be using it. But if you drop a sound suppression software on there like brush free, which I think is like 40 quid, I'm not sure. But yeah, you can just hit learn and you get these snippets of sound. So now there's just a little bit of sound in there. There's none of the noise and I can probably make that fit my track. And then same again for this one, which is also quite chaotic. Just learn, and then it'll make it a lot more usable. So I found that's a little trick that works really well for a lot of the lo-fi style Foley loops that are just completely unusable in their standard form with tons of noise. Just get a noise suppressor that can work really well. Obviously a lot of EQing and sort of low cuts, high cuts works as well, but that seems to be a great little trick for using loops. So I can use stuff like this. It's at 70 BPM. So what I'm going to do is warp it and call it 140 because that's less of a distance to move. And don't be afraid to sort of move it around and make it fit your track. And what I like to do usually is get a few different stacked layers of these things. So I'll go for this wooden loop as well, which I actually wrote the BPM down wrong on this. Sorry if anyone's tried to use it. At 74, I think it's more like 63, so I'll call it 126. Can quantize that as well. If you hit Command U, you can quantize easily in Ableton. Command D to duplicate that. Duplicate these together and insert another one. Again, Command U. And then also when you've got sort of weird artifacts from changing the pitch, I also find that brush free works well on that as well. So you're left with less of the noise, just a sort of snappy sound. And then another trick that you can use if you've got spiff, which is like soothe, is you can use the delta mode, so it's sort of leaving everything that gets processed by Spiff to come through. Which is another way of finding sort of unique sounds from loops. But yeah, I usually group my loops together, maybe throw a tape emulation on there like Sketch Cassette, which has got its own sort of wobble. So we can add some wow and flutter. And you can add some compression. And often change the age as well to do some cuts. And then usually I like to go in and throw an EQ on there to cut any frequencies I don't want. And finally, a plugin that I use a lot, which I use often when I'm creating my loops for my sample packs, is Halftime. And this can work in quite a few situations where it effectively takes some of the sample, pitches it down, and you can blend it back in with the original loops. So if I just solo this, it's actually quite low anyway, so I probably wouldn't use this. So yeah, there's a few ways you can process the loops. I just thought I'd mention a few of them quickly. And obviously if you want to find loops, look for things like Foley, percussive, textural loops on Splice or in different sample packs. And you can find some great ones. And then I've got a few in Dreamy Lo-Fi Hip Hop Volume 2 and Volume 1. But I would highly recommend that you do have a go at recording some of your own loops. It's how you get the more sort of unique sounds that no one else has got. So yeah, onto recording your own loops. So when it comes to recording your own percussion and textures, it's really sort of an endless opportunity to be creative and find different sounds laying around that would work really nicely in your tracks. So obviously stuff that's designed for percussion is going to work quite well, like shakers. These are like, I think, sort of kids' toys, but they had a really nice soft sound. So I'm always on the lookout when I'm out and about for different things that can work well. Sort of like more unusual stuff like this thrift store, like shell percussive thing. Little rain stick, great for a shaker. This one I picked up recently from Amazon for my new sample pack. Little shells, you get all sorts of nice textures from them. So stuff that's designed for percussion, obviously keep an eye out for, but also just found sounds. So I'm a big advocate for having a paintbrush in your studio. It's great for like cleaning, but also for sort of brushy shaker, like brush sounds. It's really soft. You can use it on different things to get a nice sound, so that's a good one to have. Plus you can always hit stuff with the stick. I've got loads of drumsticks. Again, they don't have to be expensive, just a cheap set of different weighted drumsticks which you can hit different things with and get different sounds. Or just one that I like to do is just have them all together hitting each other. Chopsticks, again, get a nice sort of soft tappy sound which can work really well on certain tracks. Even if you've got your own drum kit, just hitting it with different things, you'll get different sounds. So yeah, be creative. These work really well to get like a crunchy sound. Find different things in the studio that you can hit to get different tones, mugs, cups. Shakers can be really great if you've got like tea bags, different herbs in little cans. All sorts of things can be great for this. So yeah, be creative, find different things. It's great to have a field recorder because you can get decent quality from anywhere. You can pick them up starting quite cheap, and generally they're going to do the job. You don't need a pristine high quality sound for this sort of thing. Also your phone obviously is more than adequate, especially if you've got like a new iPhone or a new smartphone. It's probably going to have a decent mic on there, decent enough for this anyway. I know a lot of the MacBooks as well have also got great mics. Or in an ideal world, if you've got a interface and a studio mic, that's going to be great as well. And that's how you get the most creative sounds. So what I'm going to do now is just record a few different textures and sounds, and I'll show you how I process them. So I've cut the sounds up a little bit and edited them in, and this is what it currently sounds like. So it's giving the track a nice texture. It stands out quite a lot at the moment in the mix because there's not a lot going on. But generally this sort of thing is the thing that I like to layer up when there's drums. I need probably a hi-hat pattern in there, more melody, more texture, pads, etc. and then it'll all sort of start to blend together, and you'll get these little snippets of sound that just make the track more interesting as you go through. So just to show you what I've done, I've used Brus Free just to eliminate background noise from my room because it's quite loud at the moment. So that's all that's there for. Next up, very quiet shaker just from the tea bag. I also recorded this and a shaker. I've got the panned left and right, just 30 each way, because that just textures in with the shaker, just to give it a little bit more, again, variance. Next up, I've got, again, more texture. This was all of the sort of drumsticks crunched together. Again, I've done 2 different takes where I've panned left and right, again, 30, just to give it a bit of natural width. So on there, I've got some compression and just an EQ, cutting out some of the highs and lows. Probably cut out more of the lows, just to clean up the mix. But that's just a little bit of a crunchy layer that blends nicely with the snare. Next up, I've got the sort of shell sound. This one is just the sort of higher frequencies. I've cut a lot of the lows and some of the extreme highs. And I've got some reverb on there. Again, just giving it a little bit of space. I could probably go more wet. Next up was just, I think, the sound of a chopstick hitting a mug. So what I've done for this is, again, some compression, quite heavy compression, cutting the highs and lows, and then I've got this grain delay. So without it, just the one hits, again, pan left and right, this time extreme left and right, and this grain delay delays with slight frequency changes as it delays. It's just a little nice thing to have in the background. And then finally, the sound of the book closing, just for this more deep cinematic vibe. And then, as I said, with the other loops, you can use things like halftime. I like to use auto pan on the master as well. If it's getting a little bit too chaotic, I can find a nice balance of filtering out. So if I get rid of that. So if I do the extreme, I can just selectively find the sounds I want to be more prominent, and I can adjust the amount. So these sounds are more prominent, everything in between gets dipped out a little bit. That's just it, it's a little bit too chaotic. So I'll use that a little bit. And then again, I wouldn't use it on this many effects, but you've got things like halftime, which you could probably put on individual effects. If you want it to be a little bit more deep and dark. And then you can also use things like Track Spacer or Soothe will do the same thing. And these are compressors effectively, side chaining, but the input is set to the kick. So it'll just duck the frequencies that clash with the kick. You can change the amount and low cut and all that sort of thing as well. And that just cleans it up a bit. You can also dupe it and have one for the snare if you want that to cut through a little bit more. So that's just a quick example of what you can do, just recording things quickly on your own. It's an opportunity to be super creative. I found some really interesting sounds doing this. And when I'm recording sample packs, it's just a fun period of time when I'm just looking around, finding different sounds that work well. A lot of the snares that I got in my packs were just from bits of wood that were outside that I sort of snapped and crashed together, which made some good sounds. And if you've got your field recorder, you can always get your Bluetooth headphones with a little metronome ticker, and you can record some crunches and breaking leaves and twigs and all that to a metronome, and then you can do this sort of thing with that as well with field recordings. So yeah, that's a good way of doing it. And finally, I just wanted to talk about a way to get some random textures into your mix. So onto the random element. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about was using random velocity triggering to create some really interesting sounds. This is something that you can apply to a lot of different areas. I used it in a recent lo-fi house video to trigger vocal samples, but you can use it in this regard to trigger percussive Foley things and just create some interesting textures and add a sort of randomness to your track. So it works well with hi-hats, snares as well. But in this situation, I'm going to use it on the Foley. So what you're going to do is get a track and record some sounds in a similar sort of frequency range. So it could be recording the same thing in different ways, or it could be recording different instruments with a similar sort of sound. So for this, I'm just going to record some drumsticks, and I'll show you how I process and use it. So I've recorded these sounds, and now what I need to do is apply a few effects and flatten the track. Okay, now I can flatten the track. So I'm going to freeze it and flatten it. So now this is the track. Next thing I'm going to do is insert a MIDI track, and I'm going to find Ableton's Simpler. Now I can drag this sample in there and then go ahead and go on to slice, and I'm just going to go on to click on transient. I'm going to do it manually. You can do it by transient for certain sounds. For this stuff, I think it works a little bit better, but do it manually. So I'm just going to go manually ahead and click on the start of each of these samples. Okay, so now what I can do is if I press certain keys, they'll trigger certain samples. Next, what you can do is go ahead and get some MIDI effects on there. So if I get a velocity effect on there, I can add a little bit of randomness to the triggering. And then I can get an arpeggiator, throw that on there. Then now when I play a chord, I can trigger samples, and you can hear the velocity changing in that way. So I'll just record a quick chord here. Okay, so when I press play, it's triggering the sample. So in the context of the track, then what I can start to do is mess about with, for example, the steps. Or you can mess about with the groove. Make it random. And just have a bit of fun with it, play around with the different settings until you find something that works. Good thing about this is you're trying to layer in as many sounds that will sound nice in the context of your track, and then just trigger them randomly. So it works really well if you've got an a cappella that fits the track. You can chop it up into different syllables and have that droning off in the background, and then you can change the rate so it's a bit slower, faster. And then you can look for things like delay. You can even add things like an auto pan on the end, which you can change to, so now you've got more randomness in the stereo field, and you can do things like have two of these running at the same time with slightly different samples, and you can pan them left and right. So many things you can do with this, so do experiment and have a bit of fun with it. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover for this week's video. Do drop a comment and I'd like to enter the competition to win Ting, which I've not really demonstrated. I'll just show you quickly what it is if you've not seen it in any of my previous videos. So if you don't want to record your own sounds for whatever reason, this has got a nice array of stuff. There's all sorts in there. So yeah, it's a nice usable Foley rich plugin that I'll be giving away to someone who likes, comments, and is a subscriber to the channel. So be sure to enter that competition. Plus the results for the Ableton Live Lite giveaway from last week's video are in. So the winners for that are Madivoz, Karma Child, and Mixarters. So congratulations, I'll be dropping your codes over to you ASAP. Also, I have just noticed that the organic lo-fi video I did a few weeks back has hit the 200 likes. So I'm going to be giving away a copy of Lekko for that video. So hopefully this thing works. Here we go. Lewis Young. So congrats, Lewis Young. You are the winner. I'll contact you as soon as possible and get you the VST over. Remember to keep liking and commenting on the videos to make sure they get to the like threshold, and we'll be giving away more VSTs soon. And yeah, let me know what you thought of the video. Do you want to see more like this? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll catch you next time.